Howdy folks, hope you've all had a great weekend and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I've had a bit of a rough weekend myself. I mean, I say rough. I mean, you've got to keep things in perspective here. Nobody died, nobody lost their job. Well, not that I'm aware of. But all the same. Actually, you know what, before we get into that, time for a quick word from our sponsors.
Not actually a quick word from our sponsors, because, well, technically I suppose I did get this for free. So you could, I suppose, call this a sponsored section. This is Cruisers, Naval Legends. And it's available now for pre-order from World of Warships. I'll put a link in the description down below to where you can pre-order it. Although, not a great idea in case you're thinking of getting somebody who loves ships something for Christmas, because they're not actually going to ship until May of next year. But this book is an absolute work of art. They're currently taking pre-orders, although they're limited edition, but the extremely limited edition, the Grand Admiral's version, is already sold out. Each book in various different editions comes with increasingly valuable in-game items. I mean, the basic edition, the Lieutenant's edition also, the basic edition is $100. These are not cheap books. But even the basic edition comes with $60 worth of in-game content for World of Warships. And this is what you call a coffee table book. It's there to be left on your coffee table for guests to browse and marvel at just how beautiful it is. But there is a whole bunch of information in here as well. And all kinds of pop-outs and stuff. For example, let's just find one at random. Here we go. Chapter 5, World War II Cruisers, the Arctic. And we've got this pop out here showing valuable cargo that was lost during the Arctic convoy routes and samples of equipment supplied to the Soviet Union by the United Kingdom. It's just full of this kind of thing. And it is just a work of art. So I got this from Wargaming, obviously. Chrysantos, who you may know, thought that I might be interested in this, and it really is very nice. And available for pre-order at the link down below in the video description. And now, back to the video.
So, the stories of my trials and tribulations this weekend kind of started with, and I know these aren't first world problems. Like I said, nobody's losing their jobs, nobody's died, nobody's health is suffering. But I thought to myself, you know what? I want to upgrade my graphics card. Mostly because I've been playing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. And my existing graphics card, as you can see on screen right now, my RTX 3080, it's still a good card, but it really does struggle with ray tracing at 4K resolution. So I thought, you know what? The prices of RTX 4080s have come down a lot in the last 6 months or so. And because, recording gameplay and processing video is kind of my job, I can write it off against tax as a business expense. So, I really should be buying a new PC every year and writing it off against tax as a business expense, but it's not like I need a new PC. I mean, I don't even need a new graphics card, as you can see from the background footage. The RTX 3080 is doing a great job. But I wanted one, damn it. I wanted to play Phantom Liberty with the ray tracing on and still have 60 frames per second. So I thought, screw it, and I ordered an MSI RTX 4080. It arrived the next day, and swapping a graphics card isn't hard. It's not like wiring up the power connections from your power supply unit to everything on the motherboard that needs it. I mean, that I wouldn't imagine trying to do myself. But swapping a graphics card is easy. Just take one out, put the other one in, attach the power connectors, and off you go. I mean, it's a bit of a pain in the arse. You've got to unplug everything out the back of the PC, get the PC off the desk onto, a flat, static-free surface. But I mean, it's a pain in the arse. It's not hard to do. You don't require a degree in electrical engineering to unplug everything out the back of your PC. And the actual swapping of the graphics card is easy as well. You just whip one out, put the new one in. Done. Also, I thought. So I get the PC open, I whip out the 3080, nice and easy, unpackage the 4080, nice and easy, plug the 4080 in, nice and easy. Now I need to supply it with power. Right. You see, the RTX 3080 has got two, I think, 8-pin power sockets. And coming out of my power supply unit, I have two 8-pin power sockets. No problem. The problem with the 4080 is it wants to be fed three 8-pin power sockets. And I only have two. So, I mean, it comes with an... Also, yeah, the sockets on the actual card itself are different. It's fine, it came with an adapter. But the adapter wanted me to feed three power sockets to it, and I only have two. So I tried it with the two I had. Didn't work. Blank screen, no signal on the monitor. I don't think the graphics card was even spinning up. Just not enough power. Oh, fantastic. So I opened it all up again, had a look at the power supply unit, see if there was a third power cable hiding away there that wasn't needed because the 3080 only needed two, and nope. Shit. So now I need a new PSU as well. Which means, although PSUs aren't that expensive, but the thing about the existing PSU is it's not modular. So, and again, you know, changing a power supply unit is not something that I'm going to do. So I need to pay somebody to do it, which means I need to send my PC away for a few days while they change the power supply, fit the 4080, reconnect all of the power to everything on the motherboard that needs it, and then send it back to me, which means I need to get the backup PC out of storage. And I don't even know... I can't even remember the last time I fired that up. So that, it's just a huge pain in the arse getting everything on that up to date in order to be able to toss a video out every day. In fact, I don't even know if I can produce videos on the backup PC, which is hilarious because the backup PC was going to be my main PC and I specifically spec'd it for video processing, but it's not so much the hardware, it's the software. Because I don't even think that the video editing software on that backup PC is still up to date. And I might not be able to update it because I've got the current version of the software on my main PC, and it might not let me install it on a different machine at the... Oh, yeah. Let's just say, big old pain in the arse. I might actually have to get all of next week's videos done in advance before I send it. Yo. Yeah, like I said, slightly traumatic. So anyway, but that's not all. So the next major ball ache that I had, actually I'd had many examples of the thing that I'm about to talk about all throughout the preceding week, but it all kind of came ahead on Saturday. So this is gaming related, but it kind of, you know, you get examples of this sort of thing in real life as well. Some of which I'll give you once I've explained the situation. So, I'm playing World of Warcraft. I know, big surprise. I'm on my Shaman, who's my main character. This is Wrath of the Lich King Classic, for those of you who know the difference. I haven't actually been playing much Warcraft, not since Phantom Liberty came out for Cyberpunk 2077. That's been occupying most of my time, but there are certain things that I kind of, well, not really need to do in Wrath of the Lich King Classic every day, but stuff that would be beneficial for me. So my Shaman, my main character, she does have very good gear. It's not the best, but it's pretty damn close. And this sort of thing's always been a problem for Blizzard with Warcraft, because how do you incentivize people who have great gear and don't need anything that drops from a dungeon? How do you incentivize them to queue up for dungeons with those characters who don't need any of the gear that drops in that dungeon? Because this is going to probably actually be most of your players. The number of players who have just reached maximum level and do actually need stuff from the dungeons on a mature server is going to be kind of small, which means that those players are going to be sitting in queues for the dungeons for hours before the dungeon finder can actually find a group. So you need to incentivize the people who don't need the gear from the dungeons to still queue for the dungeons. And the way that Blizzard got around this, and it's a fairly neat solution, is you get a daily quest every day to kill the last boss in a random dungeon. And when you kill that last boss and hand in the daily quest, you get the same... I'm trying to keep this simple for people who don't actually play World of Warcraft, which is probably going to be most of you. But when you hand in that daily quest, you get rewarded with a whole bunch of the same kind of tokens that drop in 10 and 25 man raid dungeons, the kind of stuff that's actually useful and attractive for people who don't need the stuff that drops in the dungeon itself. So, pretty elegant and neat solution. Everybody's happy. The people who actually need the stuff from the dungeons get shorter queues because the people who don't need the stuff from the dungeons are also joining the queues. And then when the group gets formed, they're basically getting carried through the dungeon by people for whom it's trivial content. Fantastic. Everybody's happy. Yeah, not everybody. You see, people, myself included, very quickly realised that if you just need to do one dungeon every day in order to get this daily quest done, and you don't really care about the loot that drops in the dungeon, then you want to do the dungeon that is the quickest and the easiest to clear. And that dungeon is a relatively new dungeon, the Forge of Souls. It only has 2 bosses in it, and it's basically just one long corridor with a couple of twists and turns, where you clear a whole bunch of bad guys on the way to the first boss. You kill the first boss, then you clear a bunch of bad guys on the way to the second boss, you kill the second boss, you're done. 10 minutes. Easy. Which meant that queues for the Forge of Souls were pretty quick, but queues for everything else were horrible, because all of the people with the good gear were queuing for the Forge of Souls, because it was easy and it only took 10 minutes. And also because I'm playing a shaman. I mean, my shaman isn't actually a healer, but I've kept her healing gear up to date. And seriously, healing a dungeon as a shaman is just playing Warcraft in easy mode. And the reason for that is down to 2 things. Totems and chain heal. So, totems are a shaman thing. You drop these totems and they have different effects. So, for example, she drops her healing stream totem and it heals every group member for more than 500 health per second. It's stupidly good. I don't even have to worry about people getting poisoned or diseased, and there's a fair bit of that in the Forge of Souls, because I can just drop a cleansing totem, and I don't even have to target the person who needs the disease removed. The totem just takes care of it for me. It is totally brain-free. Speaking of brain-free, the other major tool in a healing shaman's arsenal is the spell Chain Heal. And it is so good and requires so little thought that people call it brain heal. You see, what it does is you target one person and it gives them a big heal, but then it jumps to 3 other people and heals slightly less with each jump. But here's the thing, it doesn't just pick a random person, it jumps to whoever needs it the most. So it's basically brain-free healing. So healing a 5-man dungeon group when you've got first these totems that can heal everybody without you having to do anything, and that can cleanse poisons and diseases without you having to do anything. And when you've got your main healing spell that basically picks who needs the heals the most and does that for you. I mean, it's easy mode. At least, it's easy mode as long as nobody's got PvP turned on. Player versus player combat. Why would you have PvP on in a dungeon? There are no members of the enemy faction in a dungeon. It's just you versus the AI. Yeah, I know. And yet, I have never, ever run one of these dungeons without at least one person in the group being flagged for PvP combat. Why is that a problem? Allow me to explain. You see, Warcraft generally has 2 kinds of servers, PvP and PvE. On a PvP server, members of the enemy faction, the Horde and the Alliance, are free to fight and kill each other at any time. On a PvE, or player versus environment server, player versus player combat is what they call consensual. You have to deliberately flag yourself for PvP combat before you can attack members of the opposite faction who have also flagged themselves for PvP combat. But what used to happen back in the bad old days was that people very quickly discovered a way to exploit this. So let's say there's somebody who's a member of your faction, let's say you're both Alliance, and this person has flagged themselves for PvP and is busy fighting members of the Horde, the other faction. And he's getting his ass kicked, and you're a healer, but you do not have PvP turned on. You could heal that guy and keep him up and basically make him unkillable. And the enemy players wouldn't be able to do anything about it because you weren't flagged for PvP combat. To their credit, Blizzard quickly realised that this was utter bullshit, and they patched it so that if you tried to heal somebody who had PvP on, you would also automatically turn on PvP the second you tried to heal them or buff them. So that's fine. But the next thing that happened was that healers were finding themselves being unintentionally flagged for PvP by tossing group heals into groups that also contained people, even though they weren't targeting them directly. But somebody in that group was flagged for PvP, the group heal would hit them, and instantly the healer's flagged for PvP as well. So they then fixed that, so that you couldn't heal anybody accidentally who had PvP on if you tossed a group heal anywhere near them. So that was good. You can see where this is going, can't you? So I queue for the Forge of Souls. I've been doing this on my shaman every day for weeks, and it's usually, fast and easy. Although there's always at least one person in the group who turns up with PvP on. But I never need to do it again. This is the last time I need to do it. I only need 2 more of these tokens. And you get 5 for doing the daily quest. So naturally, the game gave me the worst group imaginable. I zoned in. 2 of the group had PvP turned on. I mean, the tank was very well geared. One of the DPS was very well geared. But of course, the 2 people with the shittiest gear, who were therefore going to take the most damage because they didn't have as much health as everybody else, they didn't have as much armor, and they had less mitigation than everybody else. The 2 people who were going to take the most damage and needed the heals the most were the 2 people that my healing stream totem wasn't going to heal and my chain heal wasn't going to touch. Because these 2 numpties zoned into a PvE dungeon with player versus player combat turned on, which meant I had to nursemaid them. I had to target them with individual specific heals. And everybody in the group's taken damage during these fights, by the way, including me, but these 2 were special. Normally I just drop a Riptide on the tank, which boosts the effectiveness of the next chain heal that I cast, target the tank, spam chain heal at him, and chain heal takes care of everybody. And any little bits of health that need healing left over, the healing stream totem takes care of. But no, oh no. Everybody's taking damage, but these 2 need individual care and attention. And then things started getting worse. I mean, it's a quick and simple dungeon, but it's not like you can just ignore the fight mechanics. You get to the last boss, and there's this thing called Mirrored Soul. You'll target one person, put Mirrored Soul on them, and then that person takes a percentage of the damage that everybody is doing to the boss. So he puts Mirrored Soul on me. Now what's supposed to happen when you get Mirrored Soul is everybody stops hitting the boss, so you don't kill the person with Mirrored Soul. That's what's supposed to happen. Now admittedly, the Chuckle Brothers, the 2 with PvP on, they weren't doing enough damage to kill me. I could quite comfortably keep myself up through their damage output. But the other DPS, right, the one who didn't have PvP on, he had very, very good gear, and he was doing a shit ton of damage, and he killed me. So I kept myself up for a couple of seconds, and Mirrored Soul was about to end, but yeah, there was just too much incoming damage, and I dropped like a sack of shit. And I'm the healer. Oh, I should probably also take this time to just relate the events that occurred immediately before running in to engage this final boss. There's a short corridor that leads to him, and there are 2 bad guys in that corridor who do a huge amount of damage to everybody in the group. Now, normally, the tank just grabs both of them at the same time and relies on the healer to keep everybody up, which normally I'm perfectly capable of doing with my healing stream totem and my chain heal spell. But thanks to the Chuckle Brothers, I couldn't do that. And the tank, of course, grabbed both of them at the same time. And then immediately ran in to engage the boss, with everybody in the group, the tank included, on less than 40% health. So I'm now furiously trying to get everybody topped up without being able to rely on the healing stream totem or the chain heal spell. The boss casts Mirrored Soul on me, and I drop like a sack of shit. And it was at this point where I came down with a serious case of Stroppy healer syndrome. So this is, well, it's an affliction that only really affects healers. Healers who have been abused by the groups that they're trying to keep up during dungeon and raid runs. See, as a shaman, I get this ability to self-resurrect once every 30 minutes. So I could have just popped back up again and saved the day. But Stroppy healer syndrome kicked in. I thought, no, these guys just got me killed. I'm going to get them killed. So I stayed dead, and very quickly, they all died too. I thought, right, that'll teach them a lesson. It didn't teach them a lesson. It's like yelling at somebody who's doing something moronic in a game of World of Tanks or World of Warships. It might make you feel better, but it doesn't actually do any good. So we're all dead. We all have to run back to the, as ghosts, to the dungeon entrance, resurrect, and then all run all the way through the dungeon right back to the end boss, which everybody did, except for the tank whose fault it was that we engaged the last boss with everybody on less than 40% health. I had one of those tanks who thinks that the healer is his own personal resurrection service. He just basically lay there dead underneath the last boss, waiting for me to come back and pick his sorry ass up. Literally underneath the last boss. I didn't even know if I could get close enough to resurrect him without triggering the boss. Fortunately, I was. We were able to get it done. The boss cast Mirrored Soul, this time on one of the DPS. Ha ha, let him die. Didn't matter. Was one of the Chuckle Brothers. Was doing lousy DPS anyway. The boss went down. I got my token. And I never need to do the Forge of Souls again. The fun doesn't end there though. Later the same day. So... I ended up going into Icecrown Citadel in a 10-man guild raid. Doing most of it on here. There's one boss in there in particular. Well, there's a couple in there in particular that if you try to do in heroic mode are an utter nightmare. But one of them, Professor Putricide, is particularly problematic. We spent 2 hours trying to kill this guy on heroic mode. It was a 4-hour long raid. I died 60 times. For those of you who are quick with the mathematics, that means that during the entire course of that 4-hour raid, I died on average once every 4 minutes. Because I could self-resurrect, and because there are classes in the game who can, what they call battle resurrect people, druids for example. Normally you can't resurrect somebody in combat, but druids can. Again, it's on a cooldown. But because of that, and the fact that I could self-resurrect once every 30 minutes, that means that whereas most people are dying on a boss fight only once, I could die in a boss fight up to 3 times in the same fight. Oh god, it was a traumatic day. Let me just say that. First the graphics card not fitting, then the nightmare Forge of Souls run, and then the one death every 4 minutes. Oh yeah, Saturday wasn't a fun day for me. And now, admittedly, you're probably sitting there thinking, wow, you must be pretty bad to die 60 times in 4 hours during a raid. Some of those deaths were my own dumb fault, but not even most of them. Maybe 10 of those deaths were as a direct result of my own stupidity. But the other 50, and this really grinds my gears. You see, the one thing that I'm pretty good at in a World of Warcraft raid is being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Right, I know the boss fights, I know how the mechanics work. Most of my deaths occurred due to other people not being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and getting me killed because I just happened to be near them. Somebody else thinking, oh, I'll just squeeze in a little more damage while standing next to me. And of course, the thing that's going to kill everybody hits them because they weren't moving to the place where they should have been, and I had the misfortune to be standing next to them. It really grinds my gears. Constantly having to compensate for other people not doing the right thing. And you get this in real life as well. The famous example that I used to give was back when I was in the Navy. Some of you may have heard this story before. But when I was a radio operator, when you were the duty radio operator, which was supposed to be a duty that was spread out amongst all of the able ratings in the communications department, you were also a member of what was known as the ship's reaction force, which meant you had to be armed. You couldn't be armed unless you were qualified on the rifle, which at the time, in fact still is, was the SA-80. And the only thing you had to do to qualify on this rifle was do a weapon handling test every month to ensure that you knew how to handle the weapon safely. Just basic firearm safety, very, very easy to do. And you had to pass what was called the Naval Annual Personal Weapon Test. Literally once a year, you had to go, I mean, it's not hard, once a year you had to go to the firing range and achieve a basic level of marksmanship. I mean, not hard. 100-meter range, not 300, 100-meter range. You get 55 shots at this target, man-sized target at 100 meters. On a bad day, I might score as low as 50. I mean, I was a pretty good shot. I can't remember, because it's been a while now, I can't remember what the exact score was that you needed out of 55 in order to pass, but it was not hard. It was something like 30. That's all you needed to qualify. An incredibly low bar to pass, and people still managed to fail. So we got back from the first Gulf War, and we got female crew on board for the first time. Not one of them was qualified on the rifle. They all kept failing their annual personal weapons test, which meant none of them could keep duties. So all of the guys were keeping double duties because of the incompetence of the girls. Oh, that sounds serious. What punishments were levied against people who kept failing this test and were therefore imposing an unfair level of work on everybody who was competent? No punishment whatsoever. There was no downside to failing this test. It was all upsides. You never got to keep duties. You could go ashore every night, while Muggins here was doing duties for you. To make matters worse, after a couple of years of this, I was on a ship, I think it was HMS Newcastle actually, and there was one of the lads in the department, Nobby. He was a good lad. He was just a lousy shot. I mean, he genuinely tried, and he was really concerned that he was, letting everybody down. I mean, Nobby didn't always fail, but he came perilously close to failing, and it really bothered him because, he didn't want to be a burden to the rest of the department. He was a good lad. So we were due to go for our annual weapon test, and I said, Nobby, don't worry, you're not going to fail today. And I made sure I was in the firing lane next to him, and I put a bunch of my shots into his target, which meant that I might actually fail and not have to keep duties. So at the end of the shoot, we all went to get our scores, and I got 50 out of 55. I thought, what the hell? I know I didn't get 50 out of 55. Nobby got a good score. So I went to the petty officer gunner. I said, so what's going on there? He says, yeah, we know you're a good shot. You were clearly just having a bad day. Maybe you were shooting at the wrong target, so we just gave you a pass anyway. I was like, for God's sake, I can't even get it wrong correctly. I always say never be the best person around digging ditches, because it doesn't mean that they put you in charge of the ditch digging detail. They just give you a bigger shovel. And on that bombshell, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've all had a great weekend, at least one better than me. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.